Oh, hey there, folks. This is Kate Gaffney, your host of Service from Hell. And I'm just popping on here quickly to let you know that this interview with the absolutely hilarious and incredibly lovely Annick Adelle was recorded via Zoom because I was over in London and Annick was in New York at the time of recording. And so the sound quality is slightly different from what it normally is when I record. And you can hear a couple hiccups in the middle, and Zoom actually cut out because the internet cut out in the middle of the interview. So we had to circle back. So there are, that's life, but I just wanted to let you know that that is what's happening with this episode. And Annick's tour dates are all on Instagram, as well as information on how to get Annick's album. By the time of this airing, Annick's album has actually already come out. So it should be on all of the various places where you can buy and stream albums, but always please make sure you go to Annick's Instagram and follow Annick there, find out performance dates, etc., and buy Annick's album called Between Two Worlds. It is hilarious. I got to listen to it, and you should too, because Annick is lovely. So thank you folks so much for listening. Let's get on with the show. Oh, hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out, and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles. And at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat. I'd like to welcome our guest, internationally touring stand-up comic, Annick Adelle. Annick grew up in Germany, but began in comedy in San Francisco and now lives between New York City and Berlin. Fancy. Annick performs throughout the US and Europe, recently opening for Eliza Schlesinger, and has appeared at Sketchfest in San Francisco and Laughing Skull Fest in Atlanta. Annick plans to tape with Comedy Central this fall. Also, most excitedly, Annick's debut album, Between Two Worlds, came out on Blonde Machine in August of this year. So Annick is about to be too good for podcasts like mine. So we're really grateful that Annick is here. So that said, Annick, what got you into comedy? Can you tell a huge difference in the reception of your jokes here versus overseas? How stoked are you for your album release? Tell us all the things. Your face is awesome.
Wow. Where should I start? Thanks for having me. And I think this is a good moment to talk about all these things. The service is changing, right? As we speak, it's getting much more attention these days too, right? With after the pandemic, so many people are missing in the service industry, and all of a sudden we realize, ooh, they're really, really indispensable, these people. So I love that you talk about it. What got me into comedy? I think if we define comedy as a service industry for a second, what got me into comedy is this undeniable want to make people laugh. That's, whether I was with friends or in family settings, I would always have little skits and bits I would do. My parents celebrated 30 years of marriage. I would do like a little sketch in front of everybody. Or my best friend was getting married. I did a stand-up routine, I guess, without knowing it was a stand-up routine. So I just love that sort of stuff. And so when I moved to the US in 2014, I was moving for my employer, but I had a 6 weeks break, and I was like, oh, during these 6 weeks, I will do two things that scare the shit out of me. And one was learning how to dance, because I can't dance. And the other one was doing stand-up comedy, because I had read DeGeneres' biography. And when I read that, I was like, oh, this is an actual job, because it's not a job in Germany, like, duh, Germans, we don't know comedy that well, everybody knows that. So I think when I moved to the US, that's the first time I realized, oh, this is a job. Oh my God, that's what I want to do. And then I did my first open mic in San Francisco in a laundromat called Brainwash.
Oh my God, in a laundromat. How did that go?
Terribly. Basically, I went up last because I didn't know the rules, and all the comics that come up to that to the open mic, they had already left. So I was probably the only one with the
No.
host. Yeah. And then three homeless people doing laundry. So it was amazing. But the thing is, I came off stage and I was so hooked. I was like, I got to do this again. It went
Wait,
terribly, but
I,
I still loved it.
really? Like,
Yeah.
even though, so what was it about it? Was it the feeling that you got when you were just saying things? Like, what was it that hooked you?
I think because I it gave me an idea of this is where your humor and your laughter and your authentic self can go.
Ooh, what a great fucking answer.
No,
Where
that's
you're,
true because comedy, if you think about it, if people go on stage and they're not their authentic self, we pick up on it like instantly. You don't even have to be smart. We like go, yep, not buying this for a second. And so I don't know what it was. I think, and it ties into, I'm sure we're going to get into it later, but this, my whole identity, I was kind of hiding. So I guess, it allowed me to just be more authentic and I loved it. So.
that's such a fucking like honest answer. And I love that where your authentic self can go. So it was you sort of plugging into who you know yourself to be. And when you say, identity kind of struggles, do you want to talk about that? Is that something that
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not just gender, right? For sure, gender is coming up for me now, a couple of years in, but it's everything. You're in I was employed back in the days, right? So I was in a job, and at a job, you're always putting up a little bit of a front, right? You're like, I'm this professional person. Oh no, I have no problems at all. And yes, I all of my t-shirts are starched and whatever. It's we I don't know, everything's great, right? And so when you tear down that mask one by one, because obviously it's not just one, it's so many, that's when you get to the bottom of things and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna be me, I'm not gonna put up a front. I'm gonna talk about my insecurities. I'm going to talk about how it is to be German and live with shame and guilt. How it is to, but also be ridiculed, by Americans about this, and yet you guys had atrocities, like all this stuff that comes up for you, which is kind of it can be a little, and you're like, oh, should I talk about it? And then you're like, no, I'm going to talk about it. And I think it's a matter of getting good at talking about it so that it's interesting to people and that people can actually receive the message, and yet you being yourself, and yet, not being, I don't know, judgmental about other people and just have a conversation. So I don't know, this art form is just the best there is to become authentic.
Yeah, okay. And so get us up to today. So you
Yeah.
you decided with the job to move from Germany to the States. And was the States move meant to be permanent, or was it I'm just going to do this for the job and then I'm going back to Germany?
It was potentially going to be permanent. So that was the idea of moving. And but obviously I didn't know how long it's going to take. And then 2 years into the move, I was like, okay, I'll do stand-up comedy. And then I left the job without any new job. And I was like, I'll just start doing this. And the way I got there was that I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna give myself 6 months and work full time as a stand-up comedian and see if I like every aspect of it. And by the way, I didn't come up with this genius idea. I have a strategy person who went to MIT or something, and she's like, give yourself 6 months and then you're gonna fit. And I'm like, all right. And so that's what I did. And I knew I had money for 6 months to not make any money and try it out. And then I think that was great because it got me into like, what does stand-up look like when you produce a show, when you do the road, when you do the clubs, when you do other cities, like big cities, right? And so I got a really good array of what comedy will look like or would look like, and I loved every aspect. Well, not every, but a lot of aspects of it. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. And then I got myself a contractor job and for paying the bills, and here we are.
So how did you, from a logistical standpoint, if you quit a job, I would assume that job was sponsoring you to be able to be over here. So what did you do in that 6 month period to be able to like, or is this not something we should talk about on the mic? Like, were you
No.
okay.
I'm not illegal. So I got myself a visa, and the way I got myself a visa is I open up my own company. So technically, yeah, I'm an investor in America
That's amazing. Opened up
without
your own.
being very rich, but you know,
Hey, who cares? Good for you.
yeah.
Okay, so you've released your album, and so are you about to just go on tour like crazy, or what are the next steps for you?
It's already happened, girl.
Oh,
So no, but yes, obviously I'm promoting the album, but I'm doing the road like I've been doing before, and but I live in New York now, half of my time, and
ah,
I can't because I've been doing quote unquote the road for a little bit, including during the pandemic, staying in Europe for almost 2 years. I'm a little bit looking to also stay, put in New York and actually get my feet wet and start, start digging into the scene here. So yes, it's promotion time, but also trying to, get my feet wet in the New York scene.
that's great. Have you found that to be challenging?
I think, when you move to a new town, it's always a little challenging to get to know everything. Oh, who's my chiropractor? What dentist should I go to? And this is the same for stand-up comedy. What's the good shows? What are the clubs? I mean, sure, it helps, that you have this and that credit, but it's like everything. If you don't like the person, or you book the friends that you have, and then, oh, there's a new person, apparently they're nice. Oh, I'll book them, So you got to get to know people. I'm very relaxed about it, but yeah, I think it takes a little time, but so far I love it.
That's
Why do I
great.
love it? It's very close to my European culture, and I'm like, perfect. This is where I need to be. I'm exactly where I need to be.
Meaning
Love
New
it.
York, like the vibe of New York
New
is very
York,
similar.
yes, it's very,
Okay.
it's intelligent humor, it's Jewish culture, it's no BS. I got spit in the face already 3 times, you know what I mean? Like, people are just going for it. I'm like, all right, this is good.
Oh, I love it. Okay. And so do you, the last question in this section, are you touring bilingually? Are you doing like, will you do stand up like kind of equal parts German, equal parts English, or are you mostly touring in English?
That's a good question. So in America, English only, right? I just came back from Bozeman headlining, weekend. So that's typically the jobs we do on the road, right? So headlining and clubs, and it's amazing. You get to travel. In Europe, I'm doing the road in quote unquote because the market isn't as evolved as in America yet, right? So the road is me having created my own show, which I call Annick and Friends, and I take it on the road, as in I travel, a couple of cities in Europe, and then I bring my American or non-American friends with me, and I do the shows in English and in German.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And then the way it's set up, it's just like in America, it's a host, a feature, and then me headlining, and we go from city to city. So I kind of created the road for myself, because if you don't do that, the way they do it in Europe most of the time is you have to be the stand-up comedian, and then you have to do 2 times 45 minutes with a break in between. And I was like, no way I'm doing that. Nobody wants
No,
to see that.
no,
Even
that's
I don't want to see
insane.
it, right? It's too much.
It's too much. It's too much. So
So
that so you created your own sort of path, and so now
yeah,
that's where you're. So you
yeah.
is that your main business right now?
In terms of money,
Yeah,
so for comedy, I would say,
like
mm,
touring, meaning like is touring the main bread and
yeah.
butter,
Oh
or is
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Okay,
make
cool.
a little bit of money with the clubs in New York, but it's yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. Nobody's getting rich. Okay, cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
you worked at the Comedy Store. It's
Whew.
15 bucks a set.
Yeah.
You can you can live with that.
No, you can't even buy two coffees in a day for that. So
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
okay. Well, Anik, we're gonna move on. So
Go
folks,
for
we
it.
hope you enjoyed your apps. We're gonna go on to the entrees after a quick break. We're back. Now it is time for the entrees. Okay, Anik, I say that this is the like speed round of questions. It's not. Feel free to tell stories. But this is where you get into the gnarly part, and this is what the audience loves the most. So the dirtier, the better for any
Go
of
for
these
it.
questions. Okay.
Okay.
So, what was your first job ever that was like, I don't know exactly how it works in Germany, but I would assume like, you could have had like a paper route or something where you were making cash on hand. But was there a job where you were being paid by the corporation? Like, what was that first job for you?
Outside of actually bartending, I had a job at a company where they needed to send out marketing brochures, and it was literally taking that piece of paper, that piece of paper, and that piece of paper, putting it in an envelope, and then over there, right? So, and the entire day, that's what you did.
No,
You took 7 pieces of paper in whatever,
no.
shape or form, put them in an envelope. 7 freaking hours. After 7 freaking hours doing that, you do not know what your name is anymore. You know what I mean? You're like, in a room without windows, should I mention?
No, no,
Yes,
why?
yes, yes.
That's
Well, because
insane.
you're young and you need the money, and you're like, oh, this sounds like a great job.
Oh my God. Wait, how long did you last at that?
3 days. I was like, I can't do this. No, it's physically violation of anything you have, spirit, soul, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever's inside of your body. Oh, I don't think the no windows thing. I couldn't
Mm.
have done that.
And then at like lunchtime, they would roll in like, sandwiches, but it was like just the same sandwich.
No, was it
It
just
was
like
just one
ham on
piece.
bread?
I wish it was ham. It was, is this tartare stuff? The minced meat?
Oh, no,
It
no,
was just fucking gross. Sorry.
no. Wait, so you do that for 7 hours. You're just like stuffing
Yep.
shit into. Okay, that's insane. So you last there for 3 days,
Yep.
and then from there, were you bartending simultaneously with that?
No, bartending was when I was studying, because I'm a lawyer, so I was studying law, right?
What? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I know. I tend to not tell people because then they hate you like right away because nobody likes lawyers. But when I was studying, I had no money. Okay, so I was bartending at a cafe that opened at 6 a.m. So I had to be there at like 4 a.m. Okay, and make bread, make little, paninis, make whatever it was. Yeah, bake. Basically be a bakery.
Yeah, yeah. You weren't a bartender. You were fucking running the show there.
Yeah, because it was just me and a friend. And the funny part was she was also a law student, and we had the most fun because, you have to make fun of it. It's just not attainable otherwise, right? So people will come in at 6 a.m. still freaking drunk from partying, right? And they would be like, let's have 7 beers. And you're like, oh man, I just got up 2 hours ago. How can you have a beer, man? It's gross.
Okay,
Uh,
but sorry, so then I jumped ahead of myself. So how many customer service jobs would you say you've had total? Because I definitely count comedy as part of that. But so
hmm.
we have bartending, we have the brochures, comedy. So that's three. How many would you say you have overall?
I had another two during, so actually, like an actual bar, like with alcohol, this at nighttime. That was also during college. And then no, I think that's the other one I did.
So five total, would you say?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. And so how did you, because like in the States, it's really hard to get into bartending in the bigger cities. So how did you get into it to get like a job that would actually like pay you well? Or
Oh,
was
they
it
didn't
just
pay me well. I would get so I was lucky enough, I guess, that Europe is a pretty education heavy country. So when you do college and study law, they actually subsidize you. As in, I made like I think $500 a month from the state, right? So I was paid, quote unquote, but I had to make extra money because otherwise, you know how you're gonna survive. We
all
got
right?
this.
We got this. We got this. Here we go. Okay. So,
So I had to supplement. I had to make more money a month because what I was getting from our government wasn't enough to make a living, and so I had to go into a bartending slash cafe. And it was, I don't know, it was so bad because you had to get up at like 3:30 to
no.
be there at 4 a.m. right?
Mm.
And then you get there and then you have to bake and prepare and food and you have to memorize all the prices for all the bakery stuff that all the baked stuff that you did that you yourself just baked, okay? And then you had to make food in the kitchen too, like, oh, you want a breakfast with omelet? And yeah, no problem. And then you would have to go make it. And the owner still treated you like shit. Like he would take you by literally by your t-shirt and be like, look over here, dirty, dirty.
While there's two of you manning the whole show?
Yes.
Oh,
It
no
was
thanks.
crazy. And they paid you like minimum va wage was which okay, in Germany back then was like $10 an hour, but still it was
So
crazy.
can you explain to our audience, because we have an international audience, so sorry for all the people in Europe that are going to understand this, but can you explain to our American audience kind of what that looks like as far as, because like we're used to $2 an hour, but we'll make tips in customer service.
Right.
So do you make tips over there and how does that all work?
No, that's a good question because tips in Europe is, I don't know historically, but typically much lower, right? Here you tip 20%. In Europe, you get away with not tipping and everybody being like, all right, because you make $10 an hour minimum, I guess. That's what it was back then. And now it's probably like $15 an hour, right? Which is not great, but it's okay-ish, I guess for bartending. Definitely not for baking and being a cook and all that other stuff. But yeah, so that's that. And then the tips, but usually people tip a couple bucks. So every interaction with a customer gets you like an extra, I would say, $5 to $10 an hour. So you end up making $25 an hour, which is okay-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can kind of live on that ish. Okay. So
Yeah.
how long did you last at that job? Was it the whole time you were being educated?
I just had to I had to do
Oh.
this job because I had no other choice, like that's because it was also very convenient for me. I would finish at like noon and then I could go do my studies. So it was super convenient.
But I mean, I guess because like a typical American college experience is like school gets in the way of drinking. So like, how did that work where you were having to get up at like 3:30 in the morning and like fucking grind? I mean, you're not out partying then.
No, I wasn't part. Honestly, I was probably one of the most boring college people ever. All I would drink is coffee and study and just grind through. And I think what it was too, speaking of authenticity, I was just not me. I was just like
Mm.
just studying and not confronting anything else. And I was single 7 years. I didn't, I just grinded, girl. That's it.
Yeah, an escape, I guess. That's a good way to distract
Yeah,
if every
that's
hour is spoken for.
yeah. I mean, there's alcohol and then there's workahol, right? So
Those are things.
I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well done, you. You at least made money. Okay.
I
So,
guess.
of the five jobs we discussed before, which was your
Mm.
absolute favorite? And you can't, okay, but don't include comedy. Sorry, this is one time when I don't include it. Because obviously, right?
What's my favorite? I think, yeah, I mean, I guess as bad as that cafe job was, I think what was sweet and nice about it was that I got to be with my friend, and we just would make fun of everybody, and we would play mind games of like, all right, you have to go get, the order in, but you can't use your notepad, so you have to memorize everything, okay? We would do stuff like that, and then of course she would take the money because, this was before everything was put in like iPads and electronic stuff. So this was on paper orders, right? So we would just like she was she was just crazy. She would take orders and then she would tell them, I don't know, it's $37, at the end of the day, and then they would pay her, I don't know, 39, right, with €2 tip, and she would just put €5 in the in the tip jar, and I would be like, you can't do that. And she's like, why not? I'm like, all right. So we would
Okay.
make really good tips every time we did the shift together, and it was just fun with her, I guess. So I as much as I hated it, I kind of like. And I'm a morning person, so I like the mornings. And you know what's interesting? When you work mornings, taxi drivers come into your cafe and that's their end of day,
Oh,
shift.
sure.
Yeah, so it was kind of nice. They were hanging out. They were like, all right, job is done. Let's get some food and a beer and go to sleep. So it's kind of, I don't know, you get to know other people. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, what's your least favorite of all of those jobs?
Ugh. Um, I worked another bartender job when I was in what we call apprenticeship. And when you're a lawyer, you have to go through all these stages and make an apprenticeship. And I was in an apprenticeship with a judge, and I had to still bartend. And this guy, the guy who owned the bar, he would just come down completely coked up, right?
Ooh.
Completely on cocaine. Like, all right, what's going on? Where's that alcohol? Like he would accuse everybody of stealing alcohol, and we're like, dude, we're not doing that, you know. And he's like, well, so where's my money? And you would like bust your ass, and he would still be like, what? We only made this kind of money. Ah, like it was your fault if you didn't make more money that night. And I was like, dude, that's not on me. Also, you're spending all that money on coke and prostitutes. I found that out later, right? Yeah.
Oh, how'd you find that out?
Well, so there was this he would call in and be like, it did blah 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 arrive, and I was like, who's no, I didn't, who's that? And he's like, oh, okay, never mind then. And then women would come into he would live above the bar. Okay, so women would come into the cafe, and we would be like, who's that? And then she would ask for the owner, and we're like, this is weird. And so we kind of made the connection. But I think you have to ring the doorbell over there. And then she would come back down later, and we're like, oh,
Not a
so
date. Not a date. Definitely an
yeah,
exchange.
yeah, so
Huh.
funny. Yeah.
Insane. Okay. So that was your least favorite. So
Oh,
can you like when you experience, did you ever bartend in the States or was it all back in Germany?
this is all in Europe. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do bartending in the States.
So did you find that there was an adjustment period when like the first time, I mean, I recognize that you probably were aware that we tip in the States before you lived here, but like, did you find that there was an adjustment period of like, wait, how much do y'all expect to tip? Or were you just told ahead of time so you knew whatever, it's like $2 for a drink or whatever, that kind of thing?
I mean, I was an exchange student in Texas when I was like 16.
Ah,
And that's kind of when we literally had like an introduction to the United States. Yeah,
okay.
it was like funny. They put us in a room. They're like, okay, so in America we shave. In America we shower every morning. And in America we don't say this is shit and this is good. We say this is different and interesting. All that stuff. And in America we tip 20%. So I was like, okay.
Shit.
This kind of since then I knew, and so all right. And but yeah, I know historically Europeans don't know that stuff, and then they come over and they tip a couple bucks, and Americans are like, "What the fuck?" Because they don't know that
Yeah.
American people in the waitstaff industry only make what, 2, 3 bucks, like you said. And
Yeah.
it's actually funny because Europeans are always like, "Oh man, this waiter was so nice," and like, yeah, there is a reason, and they don't get it at all. It's so funny.
So do you think that that is the distinction in the customer service realm of like Europe versus the States? Like the servers over here are, and bartenders are nicer because they're working for the tip?
I mean, I get it. It's fair game, you know. If
Yeah.
if I were dependent on tips, I would be super nice too, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, but that's actually what I like about it. As much as I hate that they don't make more an hour, it's kind of nice for the customer that even if a little fake or whatever, it's nice. My
Mhm.
name is so and so. I'm gonna be a waiter. If you need anything, let me know. Right? In Germany, people are we're known to be fucking rude to people when we're in the service, and we're just like we can't be bothered by your order, right? We're like, all right, what do you want? You know, like that. And I'm like, oh God. So I'm not saying the fake stuff is always good, but I kind of, as a customer, I'm like, or as a human being in an exchange, I like it better. I'm not gonna lie. So
That's lovely. Okay, I agree with that.
yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've been asked to do whilst on the clock?
Wow. What's the weirdest thing? Um, Let me think.
No problem. Take your time.
Does comedy count too?
Absolutely. Feel free to throw that in there.
Mm, okay. So I will say this, the casino gigs for sure, right? You're booked as a comedian in casinos, and sometimes it's okay, and most of the times it's horrible because you're in front of people who are jaded, probably drunk, smoking in front of you, okay?
Oh.
And and the poor people, I mean, they're just trash people, you know? it's not their fault, but they're like, oh, there's comedy. Yeah, all right, sure, let's go see comedy, and then they sit in front of you and you're like, oh, how am I gonna make them laugh? But then I'm like, okay, that as a comedian, that's actually my job, right? To be like, these people, they have nothing left in life that brings them joy. Okay, you know what? Let's make them laugh. And I always try, but once I was in a casino and it was three people, and the headliner was like, "I'm not doing this." I'm like, "No, we're doing this," and he's like, "Three people," and they're sitting like way in the back,
No,
and
come on.
yeah, and you're like, and so I was like, "Let's go, people, come all the way up," and I made them all three. I made them sit in front of us, and
Oh
it
my
was,
God.
and it was, I I don't know, it was so bad, but we kind of pulled it off, and the headliner hated me for it, but I actually liked it. And so at the end, I mean, I guess it was the worst I've done, but I don't know. Yeah, casino gigs are just terrible.
And
I'm
you
not
think
gonna lie.
it's the dichotomy of like they just probably all lost their life savings at the blackjack table, and so now they're just coming to try and do whatever, or you think they got like tricked into going to the show?
I no, so the casino offers it as part of, oh, look what you get here. All this comedy, all this program. It's free too. It's
Free.
free.
That sucks.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know this, right? Every time
Yeah.
something's free, people are like, can't be good if it's free.
Oh, that sucks.
Oh, and then they sit there and they're saying, all right, and they smoke and then eating and oh God, it's terrible.
Okay, so that's
Anyway.
pretty weird to ask a bunch of people to move forward just to perform for three humans. God bless. Okay.
Mm.
Was there ever, and I don't know if culturally this is a thing, but like, was there ever an incident where they asked to speak to your manager because of something that happened, or like something that they perceived happened?
Oh wow. I guess not.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I mean, if you I did have this feedback from a stand-up comedian audience member once. I was again casino gig and obviously it was this huge room and with this headliner who was doing the da da dee da da dum da da dee da da dum jokes, and I already knew they're not going to be on board with my shit. And so I walk up and obviously I do all my gender jokes. I do
Of
all my
course.
gay and Germany jokes. And I was like, yep, we're going through this. And then at the end of the show, this guy comes up to me and he's like, oh, honey, we really liked you, but we don't know the gays. And honestly, we don't even know what Germans are like. And, like that. And I was like, all right, okay,
What?
read the room. But sometimes you got to go for it, like I was
Yeah.
in Dallas, Texas, and it was cowboy hats only, and I was like, right, we're gonna do gender jokes,
Do
because
you really? So you'll do that to yourself. You're like, I will challenge myself with
oh,
this experience like that.
100%. It's funny to me, first of all, and second of all, the cowboy hats. They hear their bubble stuff every day.
That's
They will
right.
never hear gender stuff unless, and I'm like, right, now we're going through that, and I challenge myself too because I want people to hear different stuff. And the way you can't, if you force it on them in a way that they can't digest it, then they won't be open to it. But if you suggest it and then they're like, all right, I've never thought of that. That's funny. Then I did my job, because that's when I opened their horizon a little bit, or the perspectives, maybe, hopefully, I don't know. I mean, this cowboy hat in Dallas, Texas, I was doing my gender joke, and he was not looking at me at all. And after the show, I was like, oh, he comes up to me, and I'm like, oh God, he's gonna punch me. And then he comes up to me and he goes, "This was so good. Thank you so
Oh,
much for explaining this. Finally, my wife
oh
gets it." Yeah.
my God.
And I'm like, I'm the idiot, right? I'm the idiot thinking cowboy hats will not get this. And so that night opened my eyes as to I had the preconceived notion of that this guy is an asshole, and so I gotta stop doing that.
I love that a lot, actually. That's really sweet. Do
Yeah.
you find that your training as a lawyer
Mm.
informs kind of like even you being able to have that perspective of comedy where you say, okay, I know I need to kind of subvert this in a way. I'm still going to have the conversation. I'm still going to bring up the things that matter to me, but I'm going to not do it in a like, fuck you, listen to me. You're going
Mm.
to be more subtle. Like, do you think that those things inform each other?
That's a good question. I never thought of that, but I will say this. I think that as a lawyer, you are trained on words and how to use words, right? And so if you make an argument in court, you make an argument to win the argument, right? And so you can't win an argument if you're going to be like, oh, well, this is an asshole and this is going to happen, and this, by the way, this I'm right, yeah, you're not going to. So maybe it trained me to be a little bit more factual as to this is happening. I'm just presenting the facts a little bit. Here they are. If you want them, okay. If you don't want them, that's fine too. But just listen to what I have to say, and you make it smooth and soft, and I think, with an openness to, if they don't buy it, that's okay too.
Hmm.
But you tried.
Detached from the results. That
I
helps a
think so.
lot. And
Yeah.
entertainment. I mean, that's what we have to be all the time anyway. So that's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you personally tip?
Oh, so much.
Wait, why?
Well, because I was in the service industry, right? And I see them, they have shitty shoes, and you're like, oh man, she has to do this shift in 8 hours with these shitty shoes, and you can see she's really trying, and the kitchen is giving her shit. Like, you see stuff because waiting, right? You know what's happening everywhere, and their environment. And so I feel so bad. I tip so much, and every time I get so mad when I'm with people who don't tip.
Same.
Do you get mad?
So furious. Like I will go back and add money. It's a date tell
Really?
for me. Oh yeah. If I look at the bill, if the date paid for it, and I look at the bill and I'm like, that's abhorrent, I will add cash, and that will be the last date. Yeah, 100%.
I do that. I do that with my parents because my parents are post-war, right? So they're like, oh, we got to be very careful with money.
Of course.
And I'm like, and like in Germany again, right? You would tip like a couple of euros on a $60 bill. Let's say maybe two or three. If you're generous, €4. Okay, that will be the standards. They tip 20 cents, and
Bless
I'm
their
like,
hearts.
you can't fucking be serious about that. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed for you. And I'll add money to this. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh God. And they're like, what? It's generous tip. I'm like, 20 cents. Are you joking? What can you buy for 20 cents? Nothing.
Nothing. Do
It's
you
terrible.
will you ever not tip? Is there like a setting in which if the server does X, you're like, you know what? No tip for you.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because this might be wrong, but I have this perceived reality that women, and arguably maybe I'm not a woman anymore, but you know what I mean? Like, women tend to be nicer to people who are assholes to them.
Ugh, so true.
And I'm like, I'm not. For that reason, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. So if somebody's an asshole to me, I'm not gonna tip them. And it's happened maybe 5 times in my life, okay? But for that reason, not because I'm like, oh, you asshole. Because I'm sure there's a reason, they had a bad day or whatever, blah blah. But because I can't be one of the other women who just, oh, you don't like me? Please like me. Here's more money. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not
What
doing that.
what an interesting I've never in the years of this podcast, no one's ever given that answer. That's a really interesting perspective. And we do like we are socialized to do that of like
Right?
earning it and like fuck that noise.
Do
Yes.
you do you tip more when somebody's an asshole to you?
I don't now but I used to. Before I worked at the comedy store, I
Mm.
for sure. And then after working at the comedy store, when I was perpetually a dick to people because that job was so hard. I just like now I'm like, no, you can choose to not be an asshole. Like that's it. But I would get on there would be some men who really liked to be abused and they would be at tables. And like it wasn't like I was leaning in because I get joy out of it. It was just because I was miserable. But if I really gave it to them, like I'd walk away with more money, which is so
Isn't that
backwards.
crazy?
Yeah, it is. I
How
mean,
long how long did you work at the comedy store?
almost 3 years. So right, it was all pre-COVID, and then as soon as COVID hit, that was
Oh, that's when you quit.
yeah.
I feel like I,
Um,
I know you from the
I'm
comedy
sure
store
we've
days.
probably yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so were you ever personally fired from a customer service job?
No.
I believe you. Can you describe top to bottom who the worst customer would be or an interaction you had with a particular customer that you were like, this was the worst experience I can remember having in customer service?
Like an actual customer. I'm trying to, not really. I don't have a good story for you, so I'm not gonna make one up. Yeah.
Okay. Do you
Sorry.
have like if you saw an interaction happen and you would be like, that customer's a piece of shit and that customer service worker is like, you would like feel for that customer service worker. Do you have something, a scenario that you could think of where you would be like, oh, I'm tempted to intervene? Like, that's so shitty.
Yeah, I see that at hotels a lot. Do you know that when you have like a group of people who booked a hotel room, I'm guessing it's the same in the restaurant industry, right? There's always this one guy who feels super responsible for the whole group because he organized this shit, and then he will yell at people. I had a friend who was a receptionist at the hotel, and they would yell at her because they felt the pressure of the
Uh,
group and the responsibility, and then in their head it was like I gotta show them that I'm the man, or whatever the fuck they think in their head, and I I mean, bless her heart, she was so good at this. She would, like, you know what she would do? He would yell at them, yell at her, and I watched her. I was like, oh God, she's gonna yell back. Like, that's what I would do. She did not yell back at. She asked him like so many questions. She said, "Oh, really? How long are you guys staying? Okay, and where are you from?" Like, she like boom, 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 gave him, and he was like, "What? Yeah, well, we're from Texas and whatever." All of a sudden he's giving her all this information. I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. But I felt really bad for her. I don't know. I wouldn't have handled it that way.
Yeah, I'm not as much as I think that like when I'm pushed to my limit, I would have some sort of chambered response. I would probably just freeze and be like, okay, you're yelling, whatever you want.
Did you have somebody yell at you at the
Oh,
comedy
all the
store?
time, all the time, all the time. I had someone like try and push me down the stairs. I had girls get in
Stop.
my face, like, oh yeah, threaten me, like yeah. All the time. I had to get walked out to my car several times. I mean,
Mm-mm.
yeah, it's chaos there. It's the two drink thing that
Mm.
throws people. They're like, I don't want to do this thing that I agreed to do before I got here, and it's just like they just don't like being told what to do, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it sets
I'm
up a
sorry.
dynamic. Oh, you're
Sorry
sweet.
about that. Are you gonna
Thanks.
come back though?
Yeah, to LA for sure, but I don't know
Oh,
about
yeah.
this store. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
just here temporarily. But
Okay.
okay, we have one more section. We're gonna move on to the good stuff.
Go for it.
Annick, here we go. We hope you saved room for dessert, audience. Okay, Annick, this is the nice part. So this is where we talk about the happy shit. That's why it's the shortest section. What was the nicest thing a customer has done for you whilst you were working that you can think of?
I will say this. I will pick a story from my stand-up life. And I was in Fargo, North Dakota once, not too long ago. I was recording my album, which is coming out. And
Remind us of the name again. I'll say it again at the end, but remind us of the name.
Between Two Worlds.
Love it. Okay, keep going.
And I was recording, and I love the audience. I love Fargo. I love the club. They were the first ones giving me, headlining opportunity. They were the
Oh,
first ones putting my picture on the wall.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
and I was like, if I ever record an album, I'm coming back, and doing it here because I love this club so much. And so I performed 2 nights, 2 headlining gigs. The audience didn't know we were taping because I wanted to keep it, real and special and magical. And it was so much fun. Actually, I forgot I was taping. Okay. And it's great. And that's usually what happens in comedy when it's good. Yeah, everybody's happy and you leave and oh, this was a good night. But there's one of the 2 nights, this lady walks up to me after the show and she goes, "Oh my," she's like crying. Okay. And I'm like, what's happening? And she's like, I wanted to tell you that it's so good to hear you talk about, transgender topics. I have a kid who's transgender and representation matters. And I'm like,
Or I would
I'm
have
like,
started sobbing. I want to cry
I'm
right now.
crying. No, I did cry. I cried a little. I had like goosebumps everywhere. And that's when you realize as a comedian, because we don't know this, right? We're like, oh, I'm gonna do jokes and I'm gonna try to be authentic and this for me and my journey and I hope people laugh. But we don't realize the responsibility sometimes that we have or the effects, and that's when I was realizing I was like, okay, there's fucking responsibility here too. Woo.
Take a
And
breath.
yeah, and I loved it. And so yeah, I think that's the nicest thing I've
Oh,
heard.
oh, I would have sobbed. I would have sobbed.
Hmm.
Okay, what's the best time you've ever had at work? You can include comedy.
Best time. Should I do stand up again?
You can.
Okay. Well, right after my top surgery.
Amazing. Here
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
we go.
No, here we go. Slight topic. Um, Light topic. Yeah, right after my post-surgery, I was still on drugs, I will say. I was still very weak from surgery because it takes time for you to heal, right? This is major surgery, right? And so I was recovering, I was still laying in bed and flat. And at some point I was like, all right, I feel like I could go out again. Because for like 2 weeks flat, I couldn't even walk, okay? Because
Whoa.
you're just weak and stuff. And so after I gained a little bit of strength, I was like, all right, I think I should go back and I there's a room in Berlin. This was in Berlin, and there's a room in Berlin that I really love. It's a small room. It's called the Riva, and this is the first time I did a set after top surgery, and I thought it was just going to be a set, and I walk in and there's the guy. It was weird energy. And I was like, something's going on, right? And then the guy already, the host, he's like, all right, guys, I got something really special for you fresh off top surgery, da, 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 da. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't even know he knew, and I come up and the whole room seemed to be there just for me. Yeah.
Oh.
And you're like, whoa. And they're like clapping, they're like standing ovation, and you're like, this might be the drugs, or this is actually happening. So that felt really special. I felt like a celebrity right there, I was like,
I
yeah,
love that a lot.
that was sweet.
No, that's
Yeah.
really lovely.
Mm.
Okay. What's the best lesson that you have personally learned from working in any kind of customer service?
Um, I think it's the choose your battles theme because, right? Because if somebody yells at you, now you have an option. Are you going to yell back or are you not going to yell back? And I think now where I'm at, I feel like I've gotten a little smarter about the effects of your reaction. So if you're going to yell back, that relationship's gone, right? So pick the battle and go, well, this guy needs to see some boundaries, or I can let that go because I don't care that much. It's much more important that we keep the relationship. Say your manager yells at you, right? Are you going to yell back or are you going to be like that? Yeah, that's interesting, right? And just divert or something like, because you need that relationship and then have a talk with them later, you know? Well, yeah, you got to sit them down, have the talk about the talk, and be like, "Hey, guy, look, I know this happened. We're all stressed, but I really like if you do this instead of this." So I think that's the number one lesson. Like it's about energy. If you're gonna be nice to them, chances are they're gonna be nice to you. But then also sometimes you have to actually do the battle, right? And be like, "No, this is my boundary." So.
Yeah, that's lovely. And
uh
then final question in this section, what is one piece of advice that you would give to customers who interact with customer service workers?
Well, I'm guessing that's what everybody says, but I'm going to say it. Put yourself in their shoes. These are
Mm,
people. Why do they have the job in the first place? Probably because they need the money. It's not because everybody loves serving other people. Some people may, but a lot of people just need the freaking money. And it's not their best choice, and they're doing a hard work. They're doing a hard, job, and if it's not on time, chances are it's not even their fault, right? There's a kitchen, there's other stuff going on, and so yeah, put yourself in their shoes. It's not funny, and tip well.
that's what a great piece of advice, Annick. I'll take it. It's lovely. Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Okay, well, Annick, you were such a delight. How can
Thank
people
you.
get in touch with you? Like, I know your album is coming out and we're going to put the links and everything in the show notes, but can you just give us your pitch on how people can find you?
Sure. I think the best one is like for a lot of people, but for me it's Instagram because I put some of my jokes there so people can get a feeling of what I do. But then also always post my tour dates or where I'm at, and so that's I think that's the best way for me.
Okay, can
So
you spell and give your handle?
yeah, sure. It's at Annick Adelle, so ANNICK and then ADELLE, all one word.
And do you, as far as like comedy goes, what is your ultimate, here's my goal, this is where I want to get to, like, this is what I'm about to get after?
Oh, girl, everything.
Good.
Netflix special, international comedian working in Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, New York, LA, Seattle,
Fuck yeah. That's the
you
right
know,
answer. Okay.
all the
And
good
what's
ones.
what's your favorite part of doing comedy? Like when you get on stage, what's the thing you that gets keeps you going back up there?
And I will say this, this is a little deep, but I will say this. To me, comedy is energy too. And like people come into a club and there are millions of people and they're all from all walks of lives, right? Like I said, cowboy hats and whatnot, jaded casino peoples. But But if you manage as a comedian to make them one piece of blob of energy, we're all laughing and stopping and
Mm.
laughing and stopping, and you're kind of the conductor of that. I feel like people are craving it because in this environment we're so divided and oh look what they said. Oh yeah, these assholes, right? We're all pitched against each other. And I think people actually crave to be one for a second. And comedy allows for that sometimes, and I love that. So yeah, I'm very grateful and privileged that I get to do that.
Jesus, what a fucking
I'm
good
sorry.
answer. That's a phenomenal answer. What are you talking about? I
If
love
this
it. I
is too
totally
deep,
agree.
let me know.
No,
I can do
not at all.
dick
No.
jokes.
Throw in a dick joke while we're here. We've got
Mm,
6 minutes left.
really?
Yeah. Do you actually have a dick joke? I will die.
I have a dick pic joke.
And
That's one, but
is it on
because
your album?
it's on my album.
That's what I thought. Okay, great. So, folks, we're going to drop your checks now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, we'd love to have you subscribe, rate, and or review. But you're listening on Sirius XM channel 771 right now. So find us elsewhere if you want to do that. It will help us reach more people that need to be schooled on the art of being kind and will be catharsis for those of us still working in the industry. If you want to get in touch with us here at Service from Hell directly, send us your receipts to servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out. So don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Thanks, Annick. This was so lovely. It was so nice to have you on. And I hope that everybody comes and buys your album. Oh, can they buy your album or are you streaming it only?
They can pre-order it now and they can buy it starting August 12th.
What's the easiest way to pre-order? Is there like a direct link or is that on Instagram too?
It's so in my bio in my on my Instagram I have the link, but it's literally a link to Apple Music or iTunes if you don't have Apple Music, and then you can pre-order it, and then when it comes out, it automatically reminds you, kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the track that if they were gonna pick when they buy your album and they want to get the track that defines the thing that you're like, this is how you get to know my comedy best, which is the track that you would say is you?
Wow. Oof, you're putting me on the spot. I will
Sorry.
say, no, don't worry about it. I will say I have one piece on atrocities because being from Germany, I have to talk about it.
You sure
And
do.
I think it's just interesting how we deal with atrocities as countries, and my take on how America is dealing with it, and it's not always easy, but we got to deal with our history, and I like it because hopefully, I get to say those things and the people it opens some perspective. So yeah, I will say the atrocities piece probably.
I also think you have a pretty bold move, if I can say that, like where you do crowd work and it worked out. I was like, this is a risk to do on an album. Like, I was so impressed. And you just
Really?
like, yeah, you just handled it. Because crowd work is like a rare, I mean, I think people do planted crowd work. I think they do things where they're like, I know I'm going to say this thing. But I felt like yours was like, I'm just going to talk about this person in the audience right now. I was impressed. It was very
That's what
good.
I want to do. That's what I want to be known for going forward. Like no, for sure,
Really?
for real. Yeah, crowd work and in the moment and risking everything.
I felt that way because I was like, rarely will people put crowd work on an album. So well done, you. That
Thank
was
you.
impressive.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
being
having
here.
me.
Oh, you were delightful. I really appreciate it. I
Aw.
can't I can't wait to be like, oh look, that Netflix special that came out. I got to talk to Annick. Fuck y'all.
Ah,
Annick's too busy to be on your podcast now.
that's not true. That's not true. I'll always drop you a check. Anyway,
Thank you
thanks for
so
having me.
much. Yeah,
Cool.
this was lovely.
I love that you do that podcast, because like so many people in the service industry and they just don't get, seen that much. And I love that you
Mhm.
do that, girl.
Thanks. I appreciate you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Well,
Keep
thank you
doing
for
it.
pivoting with this. I know this was a fucking pain in the ass. I really appreciate it. You're
All
delightful.
good. Flexible.
Yeah,
Improv.
I love it. Thank you. Have a great
Have a
rest
good
of your day.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.